was a difficult time. I would say that, we sort of told our families we were thinking about adopting, but I don't think it sunk in. Um, my parents were okay with it, actually, or at least they acted like they were okay with it. Um, they didn't live here, they lived in Connecticut, so we saw them 3, 4 times a year. And they would come and stay stay with us. But my father in particular, um, really loved him, and you could tell that he really loved him. But my father was that kind of a person. He wasn't judgmental. He wasn't, um, my mother was very standoffish, but with the grandkids, she was pretty okay. Um, but my husband's family was not happy, and found it very difficult to accept this child that wasn't, a blood relation. So it was a struggle with that. But we just forged ahead and said, here he is, and so we just kept on going. We just kept on doing all the things that we did. He was our son was difficult, but not awful. I mean, he wasn't. He used to have this thing that if when he was little, and I'd say maybe 3, 4 years old, when when he didn't want to do something, he'd just stop and sit down and put his head down, or put his head up against a tree, or wherever he was, saying. So we used to have to laugh him out of it and all of that. And so, he was happy, I think, a good part of the time. And at least we assumed that he was. We kept thinking, he'll be fine, he'll be fine. It didn't seem like there was severe problems at the time.
How was he relating to the girls?
Oh, fine. Yeah. I mean, they played together some. They fought like brothers and sisters do, and and I think probably until he was 9 or 10, they all got along fine. And then he was okay in school. He never misbehaved in school. They all went to a small Catholic school, and he was fine. I don't remember any particular problems. He was an okay student. He wasn't a bad student. He wasn't a good student. He did have issues, I think, when I look back, with self-esteem. He, I think, felt inferior a lot of times, and I think that came from his feeling that he really didn't belong.
Did he know he was adopted?
Yes, we always told him that he was. I can't remember how old he was when we first started saying, there was a family who couldn't take care of you anymore, and they, and so they loved you so much that they gave you to us to take care of, or something, a story like that. And we had a book about a baby being adopted. I remember, like a storybook that we used to read to him and all. And so he always knew, and I don't think other people necessarily, I think the people in the school, because it was our church and our school, and I think people knew, because, it just wasn't anything we ever hid. But I remember him starting to feel a little inferior in some ways, and that escalated as he got older. One thing that I particularly remember about him is there was this one teacher, an English teacher, and she taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade English at the school, and all the kids hated her because she was a fabulous teacher, but she was strict. And she would, if you're, she didn't care if you were a girl, a boy, who your mother was, who your father was. If you didn't do something right, she corrected you. And the kids, oh my God, she taught them so well, which they didn't realize until they got to college. But anyway, my girls used to complain about her all the time. But my son never complained about her because she treated everybody the same. Nobody was a favorite. Girls weren't favored over boys. And, it was a small school, one class at each grade level. So these 30 kids went all through kindergarten to 8th grade together. And at that, how girls are, they're always the pleasers and, want to be the teacher's pet and always helping the teacher and all of that. And he always felt teachers had favorites. I don't think he realized when he was the favorite of a couple of teachers who, I know really loved him, But this 8th grade teacher, he loved her. Never complained about her because she was always fair. She treated everybody the same. So, yeah, it was very interesting. I always remember that. And then he went to high school and he did okay. He was, he was more and more difficult, difficult to get along with, more oppositional. He was, he had nice friends, and we knew, we knew the parents of his friends, and so he really never got in trouble. He got in trouble one time in a freshman in high school with his friend, his good friend, and they were smoking. And so, and he went to a Catholic high school, and so the punishment was that you had to go for 4 Saturdays and clean the bathrooms for smoking on campus. And that was the end of it. For the next, that he was a freshman, for the next 4 years he never got in trouble because that was, but that was what he understood. If he did something wrong and the punishment, he could complain about it, but he knew that it was the right punishment and that he deserved it because he broke a rule. And he could do that, and then he could learn from that. At home it wasn't so easy, but he did okay in school. He wasn't a star student, but in this school they didn't. You didn't do your assignment. You stayed after school and worked with the teacher. You failed a test. You worked with the teacher after school, and you took the test over again. They didn't call your mom and say, your son is failing this class, and what are you going to do about it? They did something about it. So it was a very good thing because it took us out of the equation of, constantly having to be on him about stuff. But he was more and more isolating himself from the family and spending a lot of time in his room. He had a cat at the time, and he loved this cat. And he would talk to the cat. I could hear him through the door talking to the cat, and he would talk to the cat, which was really, when you look back, really pretty therapeutic for him. And so he always had little jobs after school. But then he started smoking pot, and that was, it was tough on us because we, this was in the 90s and early 90s, and it wasn't. It was like, it was bad. And now if somebody's smoking pot, you say, yeah, okay, let them smoke pot. If that's the worst thing they do, then we're happy. But at the time, it was very stressful. And, what could we do? He would go out with his friends, and we'd smell it on him when he came home. And I don't even remember if there was any discipline or what we did. I think we were just floundering around trying to, because we had had two girls who never got in trouble, always did everything right, at least that we knew. And, you know, and now say you just sort of flounder around trying to find your center of what you're, you know, what you're going to do. But he was working at the time, and at this, right near our house, there was a assisted living center. And so he got a job there, serving dinner to the people who lived there, because it was a community dining room, and you know. And he met this young woman, and she was, now that I look back at it, she was really good for him. She was smart and centered, and from a very, you know, a very close family. And so they started dating. And the interesting thing is that we had told him that he had to, I can't remember, I think what we told him was you have to have a C average to get your driver's license. You have to have a C average, and you have to save $600, which was the first year's insurance on the car. And then, you know, you could get your driver's license, and we'd even help you get a car if that, but that's what you had to do. Well, he never did it. He just didn't do it. And it didn't seem that he cared about having his driver's license. And so, because all his friends drove, so everybody would pick him up, and then he got this girlfriend who drove. Mm. So we, you know, they were very, very close. And I look back at it now, and she was there's more to the story, but she was a lovely girl. But we told him, you cannot have her in the house when we're not home. And so one time at this time, he was a senior in high school, and he really didn't want to do things with the family. And when he did, he was grouchy and hard to get along with and oppositional. And so one night we went out, and our oldest daughter was in college by this time, I believe. And but that doesn't matter. And we went out, and I forgot something at home, and we went back, and she was in the house. They weren't doing anything, but she was in the house. So my husband went crazy. And so for weeks he wouldn't talk to us. You know, he'd come out of his room, eat, of course, and go back in his room, go to school, come home. So that started a really difficult time with him, and maybe it was before that. I can't. My timeline is a little bit off, but at one point we did decide that we needed to get him into some counseling, because all of this probably had a lot to do with the adoption and so on. And he was 15 when we got him into counseling, but it was too late, because he wouldn't, you know, he was so oppositional at that time that he wouldn't talk to the counselor. And I mean, he went like 6-7 sessions, and then the psychologist said, you're wasting your money, because he's not going to talk.